Hello everyone, I'm Chris Erkley and welcome to the PE Crime Blotter, a weekly report on crime here in the Inland Empire. We begin with crime headlines. 3 members of a Redlands Latino gang have been arrested and charged with murder in the shooting deaths of 2 Redlands teenagers and the wounding of 2 others on the evening of January 5th, 2011. Charged with murder are 18-year-old Anthony John Legaspi, 22-year-old John David Salazar, and 18-year-old Adrian Powers, all of Redlands. If convicted on all of the charges, including enhancements of using a firearm and committing a crime to benefit criminal street gang, they each could be sentenced to as much as 220 years to life in prison. The felony complaints state that Legaspi fired the gun that killed 17-year-old Quinn McCaleb and 16-year-old Andrew Jackson and wounded 2 of their friends. A 5th teenager escaped uninjured when the teens were attacked while walking through a playground at a North Redlands apartment complex. A Hemet High School teacher was arrested last week on suspicion of having sex with a student on campus. Hemet Unified School District officials notified Riverside County Sheriff's deputies last week that a teacher may have been involved in a sexual relationship with a minor at the school. Sheriff's detectives said 31-year-old Janelle Ramirez and a male student were involved in sexual acts at the school during the month of December. The district would not disclose the student's age. Ramirez was released from Southwest Detention Center last week on $100,000 bail. Drag racing last weekend between 2 cousins in Lake Elsinore ended in death for one and the arrest of the other. Investigators arrested 26-year-old Luis Estrada Garcia of Lake Elsinore for vehicular manslaughter. His cousin Sergio Alex Garcia of Lake Elsinore died near the intersection of Lincoln Street and Sunswept Drive Sunday afternoon after he lost control of his BMW, which rolled over and ejected him. 3 people have been charged with murder in the shooting death of a Rialto boy just a block from a San Bernardino High School campus. 18-year-old Lamonta Marquise Maddox, 16-year-old Taron Markle Anderson, and 15-year-old Lavelle Robert Miller each face 1 count of murder. Though minors Anderson and Miller will be charged as adults. 15-year-old Anthony Dwayne Mitchell was shot to death just before 3 p.m. on February 27th during an argument at the 1100 block of North Wilson Street, a block east of Arroyo Valley High School, where Mitchell had once been a student. Murder charges were dismissed against the prime suspect in a 2010 drive-by shooting death of a 6-year-old boy in San Bernardino. The district attorney's office said charges against 19-year-old Kendrick Jackson were dropped for lack of evidence, but that the investigation into his involvement in the slaying continues. 6-year-old Amarion Adams was killed June 13th of 2010 as he stood outside his home in the 2000 block of West 14th Street. Now for a few updates on last week's headlines. Amid rising tensions on Riverside's east side, the grandmother who raised Lawrence Simmons tearfully pleaded with the public Monday to help solve the slaying of the 14-year-old Poly High School student. Lawrence was shot February 23rd as he walked home from a neighbor's house. He remained on life support until February 28th when the family donated his organs. Rewards totaling $50,000 have been offered for information, leading to the arrest and conviction of the shooter who sprang from the passenger side of a vehicle and shot Lawrence on Georgia Street. The city of Banning has approved a $25,000 reward for information that would point to a suspect in a September triple homicide. No suspects have been identified in the September 6th killing of Cynthia Yvonne Smith, Natasha Biggers, and Demetrius Hunt. Police found the 3 people inside a home on Phillips Avenue where a 2-year-old boy had been left bound and gagged in a crawl space. Well, that does it for this week's crime headlines. After the break, we'll have the Inland's Most Wanted.
We cover the issues you care about. Here at the Press Enterprise and PE.com, local news matters whether you live along Route 66 or on Main Street. We provide regional analysis and in-depth investigation of issues like education, transportation, the environment, and much more. Important matters are covered here. That is how we keep you connected to your community. The Press Enterprise and PE.com. For home delivery, call 1-800-794-NEWS.
Welcome back to the PE Crime Blotter. It is now time for the Inland's Most Wanted segment, the most wanted criminals in both Riverside and San Bernardino County. Joining me now is the Press Enterprise's John Asbury. John, our first guy comes out of Whitewater. It's Dwayne Edward Masterson, wanted for unlawful intercourse with a minor.
Yeah, authorities said that Dwayne Masterson was involved in a relationship with a 16-year-old girl in Whitewater and was living with her. And until about December 2008, when authorities said he began abusing her, ranging from slapping her, kicking her on the ground, and at one point pulling her down off a concrete wall onto her back. And he's been missing since about December 2008.
Our next guy out of Cathedral City, George Ray Wolf, a laundry list of items: identity theft, grand theft, forgery, and perjury.
Yeah, we talked about him last week as part of a larger group out of Cathedral City, where they were part of a real estate scam, and they would obtain vacant or foreclosed homes using fraudulent means, using a stolen notary deed, and then once had possession of those homes, they would go ahead and get fraudulent bank loans, live in the homes, and until they were found at the end of 2008.
Finally, our last guy out of Temecula, Troy Anthony Duncan, wanted for kidnap, for robbery, and robbery.
Right, Duncan is suspected of robbing a Chevron station off Temecula Parkway, and he went in and forced a female employee into a back room at gunpoint. Him and another woman were involved in the robbery, where they would force the employees to empty a floor safe, then tied up everyone in the gas station using zip ties, and fled in 2 cars. Authorities caught up to both cars, but he wasn't involved in either of them. They did find the woman involved, though.
Now, John, if anyone has any type of information on any of these cases, where can they call?
Authorities are asking anybody to call 855-21-CATCH.
All right, John, thanks for joining us. That does it for our Inland's Most Wanted segment. Up next on the docket. All right, it is now time for our On the Docket segment. We're taking a look at the big court cases in both Riverside and San Bernardino County this week. Joining me now, the Press Enterprise's Rich Diatley. Rich, our first case involves the murder of Norma Lopez that took place in Moreno Valley back in the summer of July 2010.
Right. Jesse Perez Torres is charged with the murder. He's pleaded and kidnapping. He's pleaded not guilty. He'll be in court on Friday for a scheduling session, and he'll be having a preliminary hearing later this month. Investigators say they've linked him to the case by his green SUV and DNA.
Our next guy, Mike Rios, a Moreno Valley school trustee, charged with attempted murder.
Right. This stems from a shooting event that happened allegedly outside his home. He's posted his $25,000 bail toward a $250,000 bond. The judge has agreed to let prosecutors investigate the source of that money for 2 more days. They're back in court on Thursday.
Our next guy is Dale Long, a former sheriff's deputy charged with murder.
A 10-year veteran, he was served at the Riverside County Superior Court Security Detail. He was relieved of his, he's no longer with the Sheriff's Department as of March 1st. He was held to answer this week for the shooting at a Murrieta bar late last year. Argument, witnesses said that culminated over a street name in Orange County.
Then finally, Ruben Ray Jurado, charged with the shooting and wounding of an Army specialist.
That's set for a preliminary hearing in San Bernardino on Thursday.
All right, Rich, thanks for joining us. That does it for the On the Docket segment. Coming up next, In Depth, we're going to take a look at the big arrests made this week in the murder of Redlands teens that took place last year. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the PE Crime Blotter.
We cover the issues you care about. Here at the Press Enterprise and PE.com, local news matters whether you live along Route 66 or on Main Street. We provide regional analysis and in-depth investigation of issues like education, transportation, the environment, and much more. Important matters are covered here. That is how we keep you connected to your community. The Press Enterprise and PE.com. For home delivery, call 1-800-794-NEWS.
Welcome back to the PE Crime Blotter. It is now time for our In-Depth segment. We're taking a look at major developments this week in a January 2011 murder in Redlands. 2 boys, Quinn McCaleb and Andrew Jackson, 2 teenagers from Redlands, were murdered, and police have been working very hard for the last 14 months to find suspects in the case. Finally, last week, arrests were made, and earlier this week, police held a press conference. Jan Sears, you were there. Exactly what happened?
The Redlands Police Chief, Mark Garcia, and the San Bernardino County District Attorney, Mike Ramos, announced the arrests of 4 young men, all Redlands residents, and all members of a criminal street gang in Redlands. They are charged with first-degree murder in the killings of Quinn McCaleb and Andrew Jackson, and also with the wounding of 2 other young men who were with them at the time.
And the parents of the 2 boys that passed, they've been very active in the last year or so, you know, having a vigil, memorial, trying to get the word out there, finding suspects. They must be provided at least a little bit of relief now that these arrests have been made.
Well, this is the day the parents have been waiting for. They are elated. I talked to Gail Howard, who's the mother of Jordan Howard, one of the teenagers who was wounded, and she said she was going to be at that press conference with bells on, and Shanita Williams McCaleb, who's Quinn's mom, she's just been looking forward to this day forever, and she said she was just thrilled.
And also a couple special circumstances involving this case because of the gang involvement of the shooter, and also the fact that 2 of the boys being charged were under age of 18, but they will be tried as adults.
2 of the young men who were arrested were 16 at the time the crime occurred, but they're going to be charged as adults. In fact, they have been charged as adults. And there are also some special circumstances attached to this case, committing a crime to benefit a criminal street gang and the use of a firearm. So the district attorney said if they are found guilty of all of those charges, they could face 220 years to life in prison.
All right, Jan, thanks for joining us. Once again, a big development in that Redlands murder case. We'll be sure to keep you updated on anything going forward. That does it for our in-depth segment, and also does it for this week's edition of the PE Crime Blotter. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.